Last but not least, you all have been sitting for a long time, so I won't keep you long. I do want to thank the committee that made the decision to induct me, and I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to be here and be an example to the student athletes that are here. That there's a lot you can do after Herkimer. I listened to Dwight and some of the things he said, and I do remember being in my guidance counselor's office after getting all these rejection letters from college coaches, thinking that at that time in my life, if you could play good ball, you'd have opportunities. And to get all these rejection letters it was overwhelming. And my mother taking me down to, I remember it was Dr. Copois, that was our guidance counselor, taking him. I'm from Westchester County, Croton-on-the-Hudson. And my mom was just a real fighter, and she just said, find him a school. And he said to me, well, there's these two guys from your town that went to Herkimer. And again, you got to keep in mind, when I came here, we never won a regional championship. Cobleskill was the top dog at that time. And some of the lacrosse players are going, Cobleskill. I mean, that was the deal. That was a 2-year college, and that was the program to beat. So I never was here. I never won a national championship. Never was a high school All-American. I never had all those accolades that a lot of people had. And I came here because 2 of my teammates from high school came here, and I followed them. Now, what's interesting about these 2 teammates, and it's, I want you to think about it. My first job was at Morehouse College as a college professor in Atlanta. That's all like 99% African-American. Dr. King, a lot of very prestigious people have gone there. Denzel Washington's son went there, a lot of people. One of the things they say at Morehouse on opening day of orientation, student orientation, they say to the students, they say, look to your right and look to your left, because the person sitting next to you may not be here in a couple of weeks. And they're serious. And sure enough, those 2 teammates of mine that came here to Herkimer, they failed out my first semester here. So those guys that, I came here following them, they were gone. They partied themselves out of school, and I was here by myself. And I just remember that experience, and I also remember Coach Wareham. And I had, at that time in my career, I had 2 coaches. I had my high school coach, who didn't have a lot of experience, and then I met Coach Wareham, Coach Wareham comes from some serious stock, some Cortland State stock. We're talking to Jeannie Galvin and a lot of people that have gone through Cortland State. And he comes from some really. Coach Wareham was coached by Jack Hammer, who's in the National Hall of Fame. Coach Wareham himself is the only junior college coach I know today, I believe still to this day, who's in the National Hall of Fame. How I know that? I'm on the voting committee for the National Hall of Fame, so I'm one of the people that makes those decisions. And then I had an opportunity to play for him. Now, my high school coach, kind of interesting, when I finished at Herkimer and got the scholarship to go to Syracuse, this is honest. And you don't know who he is, so it's not going to offend anybody. But he looked me dead in the face and said to me, Syracuse, and this is 1983, Syracuse wins their first national championship. And he looks me dead in the face. He said, Syracuse, you'll never play there. Now, I just kind of, didn't say anything. Because, for me, that's really motivation when people say stuff like that to me. Now, Coach Wareham, let me listen to his response. I got to Syracuse. I just had tendonitis. I had played my senior year. Many people don't even know this, except for John and a couple other people. But I actually played my senior year, played basketball for Coach Aloff. Now, better said, I sat on the bench for Coach Aloff because I didn't play. All right? We had a great player. We had a guy named Eddie Anderson who played 6 years professional ball over in Europe. A great team. So I'm not saying Coach Aloff did not make a good decision. He was right to keep me on the bench. But I go on to Syracuse after having knee surgery and a delayed process going in, and I'm out of shape thinking Division I player, you got to gain all this weight. So my playing weight at Herkimer was probably about 178, 180, and I gained up to about 198 just coming off surgery going into Syracuse thinking, this is how to do it. And I finally got cleared to play, and this is fall ball, like this time of the year. And I just remember the first drill, Coach Desko, who's now the head coach, he was our defense coordinator, he blows the whistle for a one-on-one. And the only thing I remember is going like this, watching the guy fly by me because I didn't move. I just didn't move. And it was just a terrible experience. And Coach Wareham told me this years after I left Syracuse, and he was right to do it at the time. He said that somehow Coach Desco and him were on the phone. I don't know who initiated the phone conversation, but Coach Wareham said to him, he said, "So John, how's Fred doing?" And he said, "He'll never play here." And Coach said, "Just give him time. He's a good kid." Now think about it. My high school coach, his response was Coach Wareham. Good coaches are so important to your career, and you really need to listen to what they're saying. Coach Wareham has always been, that kind of a motivator for me. I was a guy that came from a bad high school program. Some of you student athletes may know that experience, just not being around good coaching or, as I say, good stock. And I just didn't come from that kind of situation. I didn't have that kind of background. And Coach Wareham, coming from Cortland State, had been around those kind of people. He knew good lacrosse. He knew hard work. I had no work ethic. I was a star player in a small pond, and I had all kinds of bad habits. And he just would not allow me. I had an excuse for every sprint. And that's just the kind of player I was when I came here. And he just didn't take it. And if anybody knows Coach Wareham, he's gruff. He gets in your face. But you know he loves you. So I just remember we played Cobleskill in my senior year. Coach, I don't know if you remember this game. It was pouring down rain. And I was sick as a dog. If you kind of hear my throat now, I actually kind of have a bit of a respiratory infection and kind of borderline asthmatic. And at that time is when I first got that kind of feeling of asthma. And I remember coming to Coach, and I said, "Coach," I said, "I can't play." He said, "Oh, yeah, you are." I said, "Coach, no, I can't play." He said, "Oh, yeah, you playing." And it really was the beginning of making me mentally tough. And I think that's the difference between success and failure in life. It's being mentally tough. And if I've had success, it's because of the mental toughness that I developed in part from Coach Wareham, also from my father, who was a very old school person like that. I went on to Syracuse. I like to tell people at Syracuse, now, Coach, you tried to fix things up a little bit because I got inducted, but I'm going to tell the truth. I was not a standout player at Syracuse. I was a role player. I played well. It really wasn't until my senior year that I understood what it meant to be a Division I player. And I have to say to student athletes that are going to be going on, if you have that opportunity, no matter if it's Division III, Division II, or Division I, there's a big difference. And Dwight probably will tell you, there's a big difference in the speed of the game, the skill of the game as you go to another level. And it took about a year for me to really adjust to that. And by the time I got to my senior year, then things had really started to improve. But I didn't stop there. In 1985, my senior year, was a tryout for the U.S. national team, for the 86 team. They do it the summer before. And several of my teammates, two of my teammates actually made that team. And I'm sitting in a van during the summer camp at Syracuse that Coach Desco was running. And he said to me, this is long after tryouts are over, he said to me, real casual, he's a real quiet guy. He said to me, he said, "So why didn't you go to the tryouts?" I said, "The who?" He said, "Why didn't you go to the 85 tryouts?" And I mean, I was just dumbfounded, like the fact that he would even think that I could even qualify to do something like that. But it planted a seed. And I said right then, I said, "I'm going to make a U.S. national team." Now, it's pretty bodacious when you don't make all across the street at Syracuse, but yet you're going to say you're going to make a U.S. national team, 26 of the players in the country. But I decided then I was going to do it, and it came to fruition. What I'm saying to you is if you put your mind to something and you work hard, you make the sacrifices, you stay in when everybody else is going out, you study a couple more hours when everybody else has stopped studying, you decide not to drink when everybody else is drinking, not to smoke when everybody else is smoking. When you make those sacrifices, you can make a difference. Now, people laughed at me. When I was here at Herkimer, Friday nights, I went out with people, but I really wasn't into all the kind of stuff my other teammates did. They laughed at me. But, the funny thing is they're not laughing now. So you have to make a decision as a student athlete. And again, the rest of you guys are just kind of eavesdropping. I'm here really to talk to student athletes. You really have to make a decision to make the sacrifices if you want rewards in the future. Everything I learned in lacrosse, only thing I did was take those same principles. As a pastor, I had to say principles are parallel. So everything that I learned to be one of the 26 players in 1990 in the U.S. national team, I simply took those same principles and turned them into my academic pursuits. Now, I have ADHD.